What's going on, YouTube? This is Doug Jenkins back with I think this one will be interesting. This is a mixing session we're doing. This song was produced by a gentleman named Ryan Highsong. It is a track from Hopsin. I think that's Dizzy Wright and what's the other? Swizz. So these gentlemen, I mean, they're pretty well known. But you know, I take on everything as it comes. You know, it's my job to make it sound the best I possibly can. And to make the correct decisions based on EQ, compression, dynamics, and overall just get the song sounding amazing. So, and that's what everybody wants at the end of the day. And so if you look at all those faders, the reason I started the video at the faders is because that's where we can start and show you what's going on. This is a tracked out beat. These are all tracked. Okay, what that means is, you know, the kick drums, snare drums, hi-hats, you know, toms, vocals, backup vocals, the tag from the producer, so forth. Here's an auxiliary that I created. You'll see that moving here in a minute. There's all kinds of things going on in a mix like this. These kind of mixes, people ask, well, what does it cost to get a mix? Well, mastering is nothing like mixing. Mixing is the art of taking everything in a song and making it sound good. That's what mixing's all about. And what happens is most channels, if you look at this, I won't get all into the plugs and everything. I'm trying to make it a little time friendly. But if you see down here on the console, that's on the Control 24. That's where you add your plugins. You can add them with the mouse. You're not like, oh, we can't use the mouse now. We got the Control 24. A lot of times I find myself using the mouse. But what I can do on these, which is pretty neat, is I got a lot of plugs running. I got a plug on almost everything, and I'll use it very, very mild on some tracks, or I'll use it very drastic on other tracks because they just weren't working. And what I do, my mix style, what I've grown up with is the digital / hardware world. So when I hit like an EQ or something, now you can see that the rotary knobs on that particular channel got assigned across every single rotary knob. So people, if you were wondering about that, other cool thing is this: if I go, well, maybe I want to use this plugin like faders, I can flip it, and now the faders became the plugin, which is a really cool thing, by the way. Did you see how those faders just switched? So now I can actually use that plugin and use the faders to control that plugin. A lot of guys see these videos on the Control 24. I saw one gentleman just sort of going through the basics. He must have been new, and it's not, you know, if you use it every day, you'll get good at using it. And, you know, some guys, they never get good at using it, but I really like to dig into the stuff that's going to benefit me. So that's what happens on that. So if we hit flip again, it'll go back to my faders. If I hit, let's just say I go back in and I want to get out of that, we can get back just to the volume. So here we go. Now, in this situation, I want you to understand, if you see the solos, all those that are soloed, which is the top, you see the ones blinking, that's mute. Up above that, the ones that are just sort of solid, those are solo tracks. And I did this for a purpose. All those tracks are what I bust. Okay, so when you bust something, a lot of times you want to utilize your equipment to the best of its ability, and you want to do it in an efficient manner so I'm not spending 3 weeks on a mix. I tried that one time, and you know, at the end of the day, it really, really can either pay off or it can just cost too much money and cost me, and I actually lose money because I'm spending 3 weeks, and there's a guy, you know, an independent artist that's scrounging up the cash to do this, and they love it, but I'm like, man, I spent 3 weeks on it. The thing that I want you guys to understand right off the bat is professional mixes take time, okay? When you look at these Pro Tools sessions to the normal Pro Tools session, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's inactive tracks that we had to actually bounce and bring back in. This session was pretty big. So, you know, you can look at this like, oh yeah, that was just a bounce down. Now here's what happened. This was a bounce down from the producer out of FL Studio. The thing is, he waited to bounce it over here. That is another service we do. If you don't care about a mix and you don't have the capital right now for it, I mean, that's no problem. Just if you can utilize our converters, more power to you. He sends us beats. When he doesn't know if he's landed the beat, he'll still send the beat, and we'll run it through this. I'll show you. We'll run it through the Symphony IO down there at the bottom. The reason that we run it through that is, you guys got to understand this, and this is a great thing to learn. your sound quality, just the overall integrity of your sound quality is dictated by that piece of equipment right there. The better your converter, the better your sound quality when you're talking about digital workstations. It's like a glorified sound card. Now, that might sound stupid, but the way that these guys put this together, Apogee's great at it, Prism's great at it, Lynx is great at it, Lucid, Lavery, Mytek, Benchmark, and I always do that in my video, and I'm not doing it to, oh yeah, he knows all the names. It's the facts that the Pro Tools HD lines and stuff, they're higher end interfaces, so just sending your song through that makes it sound better. The biggest deception that a lot of guys out here are facing is, oh, I got Pro Tools, man. It's really not about Pro Tools. Pro Tools is an amazing software, but really, what are you running with it? And once you start to figure that out, then we can get into some things. So I'm going to show you how we routed this. First, we'll start with the solid state channels. If you notice the patch bay, it's because it's flexible. Patch bays allow me to patch one thing into a next. You don't have to understand the routing in this video, but I have soloed out the parts that I brought through the solid state, and I'm going to explain that here. That's all solid state. So if you noticed, it's all drums and bass. The reason I do that is because I started, experimenting with this. I've used these for so long that I got rid of an Avalon to get a pair of these alpha channels, and for the money I do mixes for, it's unbelievable what that does for the drum sound. Let's see if I can just bypass it real quick and let you hear it. That's the drums before the SSL. Here's the drums after. Now don't let volume deceive you. I didn't touch any volume. That was just EQing out, and actually the limiter is adding some volume on the far right of that unit. There's a thing called light limit, and I love that on drums and hip hop. I wouldn't recommend it on drums and rock because we're not trying to go for that punch like a hip hop song's trying to do. When I'm doing rock mixes, I usually work with a buddy that has some amazing equipment, and we usually do tracking over there, and then I'll do the final mastering. But for hip hop mixing over at my spot, absolutely. For rock mixes, send them. I mean, the reason that I'm saying that is because I work with a guy that has a full-blown studio full of 6176s and LA 2As and a TOF console, and he's got some Neves just chilling in a rack. He's got all kinds of stuff. Now, this video is not to glorify hardware, it's to tell you what it does. If you notice the solid state channels, the reason that I sent it through them was, first of all, to get some of that light limiting that happens over here. And then that right there, the equalization. We're not using the preamps on this. This is a preamp, but I really don't use it at all. The reason I bought this was because of that EQ. And the way that it was set up was off of the mastering section of some of their bigger consoles. What I mean by that, it was the EQ, and it was taken from that page. So I saw myself using it more for a subtle bus mastering, not a full-blown song master. I'm going to get into some other stuff that I use for that. But when I can do that, if I bypass the EQ, I'll push play. Way too much. Now, don't want to be blowing the studio speakers. The reason that it became way too much is because, think about what I just did. I turned it up with a limiter, but I EQ'd it before I turned it up with the limiter. Therefore, it sounds tighter, punchier, cleaner, fuller. It's up in your face. You turn it up and the volume sounds awesome and your vocals sound awesome. And I'm going to show you what else we have. The next thing that I did was, actually, these settings aren't even set because I'm coming back in. But in the same... we'll keep it in the same category, the drums. There was a kick drum that just didn't sound good going through those solid states. So just because you have them doesn't mean you have to use them. You got to pick and choose. The DBX 160A, on the other hand, I sort of overdid it. I didn't really need both channels, but I busted it and I added a little bit of verb onto a kick drum. But I really smashed this kick drum to give it that kick sound. You're hearing that kick drum. Check it out. It's kicking with the low bass. Now, I could really A-B this one. Listen to it. Let's take it off real quick. If I A-B this one, you're going to be like, what? Because what happens is, I hope it doesn't just shoot up in volume, so. Which it did. But beforehand, we couldn't, this is a hard one to A-B back and forth because I'm still running through the piece and it's boosting. But what was going on with this thing was it was way too fat. It was a lot of these hip-hop producers these days, and they're great hip-hop producers. Ryan's an amazing hip-hop producer. But that bass kick drum drives everything, and it takes away from everything else in the song. But the goal is to reduce by compression, or you can reduce by just EQ, or you need to make it fit within the song. So that's what we did with the DBX. So you have the solid states and the DBX on the drums. So now you get into this, and that, you know, that takes time. I mean, to get everything set up and get it correct. The next thing that we got going on is, first of all, before I even move on, these are running in and out of Pro Tools through the Rosetta 800 clocked from the Symphony and the Symphony IO. So those are some serious ADDA conversion going on. The sound quality is fantastic. Wouldn't trade it for anything at this point. You know, it's like, oh, well, this is better. No. So here we go. We're going to get back over to this. Now, the next bus I just ran through the backs, but a lot of these things you got to understand that I'm running them with plugins. I still got plugins going on. So there's a lot of plugins in the mix, and it's all on this Control 24 as I showed you earlier. So now you're going to have the dangerous back EQ working on this. This bus has now, if you notice that when I put that in, it took away that 400 hertz range that the drums were sounding pretty good in. It took away the lows that the drums might have been interfering with. And it does it in a way that it doesn't take away from the original intent of the producer. So check it out again. That's a hard one to listen to, but if you were here, you'd understand that all of a sudden everything became clear and transparent when we turn it up. The volume's going to sound better, everything's going to sound better. So the next bus, let's get on to everything. I'm going to bring everything in. The next bus was the grand style piano, and once again, everything was EQ'd and adjusted correctly in the box. And we use, you know, basic EQs from all kinds of different places. It doesn't matter as far as if you understand the intent of what you're going for. A lot of EQs in the box are surgical EQ, and doing fine subtle changes. If you plan on using, some EQs sound better than the others, but I've got hundreds of EQs and delays and stuff all at the disposal. So honestly, what I'm trying to get at in this video is I want to show you how we finish stuff and why we can differ from what you can do at home. So the next thing is the Manley MU. This was put on the horns, and I'm going to bring in the vocals, which are going through the backs, and they're also being dynamically controlled in the box. So check it out. I'ma do this shit without a major see, we from volume known to keep it real. Alright. My nigga, we getting straight to it and making the way. You playing the dance, you playing the vague, but I'm paying the way. I painted my skin, liquor all up in my face. I'm sipping on gin, finna take a road trip to the A. Hold up. I'm smoking weed, staying out of trouble. Out of your bubble, subtle, hop in my shit and be knocking my hustle. It's ridiculous how great that EQ is. Focus on his voice for a second. I have it off. See how it's drowned? Watch. I'ma do this shit without a major see, we from volume known to keep it real. Alright. My nigga, we getting straight to it and making the way. You playing the dance, you playing the vague, but I'm paying the way. I painted my skin, liquor all up in my face. I'm sipping on gin, finna take a road trip to the A. Hold up. I'm smoking weed, staying out of trouble. It goes from sounding like, hey, I recorded this, and these are great artists that probably recorded with great equipment, but it still sounds like DAW. and it sounds muffled. It's like, and then I put this on, and this is just a boost up in the 820. It's a cut around 1K that was a little annoying because it was just maybe something with the microphone. It wasn't their voice. When I say annoying, I don't mean the person's voice, so don't get me wrong. And then you have the 270 hertz, where most of the time with the EQ in the box, I would never boost 270 to 250 hertz. But in this sense, it works. It brings that fullness to his voice, and it changes the curve a little bit. And the presentation of his whole entire song changed, and it sounds awesome. The other thing is all these presets that I had on this mix, I'm not bringing them back up, so I'm actually mixing it while I'm listening to it. So let's listen to the string part as it comes in on the chorus.
How the people feel. I'ma do this shit without a major See, we from volume, known to keep it real. Alright. My nigga, we getting straight to it and making the way. You playing the dish, you playing the vague, but I'm paying the way. I painted my skin, liquor all up in my face. I'm sipping on gin, finna take a road trip to the A. Hold up. I'm smoking weed, staying out of trouble. How do your bubbles settle? Hop in my shit and be knocking my hustle. Right. My nigga, my ace hood, know I hustle hard. So what we tell all my ambition come from my struggles. Little nigga, what's your name? Family, where I wanna aim, where I wanna be with the OGs and the great first nigga, put it on the bag with a name. That's right, nigga, that's right. Nigga, don't even try to guess who the fuck I am.
Okay, so now that you guys understand this, I'm gonna show you something I'm gonna actually teach you something that I had a long process to be taught. And it's one thing that I highly recommend. What separates you from a professional mix? And first of all, there's a lot of things around this, but this was just a small video to present to you guys. Let me get back up here and move this up just a tad. But this was one of those videos that I just wanted to present to you. I showed you a lot of cool equipment, and I did small, subtle changes. Now these things start working, and we're doing this, and we're doing it for hour upon hour until we get it correct. Well, the thing is what separates you from a major artist that you've heard on the radio is the mixing stage. Because in the mixing stage, things like this that you might not understand or you want to understand are things that alter your recording in a good way. And we're not talking about auto-tuning people's voices, okay? We're not talking about, oh yeah, we make you sound better than you really are. It's not even about that. It's making you sound as good as you really are. Okay, so if you can capture your voice, you might be great singing a cappella in the shower, but you go to the studio and you're recording through so-and-so's microphone and it just ain't sounding right. A person like myself can understand that you would probably sound right in this kind of environment with this reverb on you, with this song. So I'm painting a picture in my head on what you're going for, and a lot of people have given me a lot of respect for this, and I appreciate everybody's comments to say, man, you're good at what you're doing. It's what I work to do. And one guy, I'm not going to get into some negative stuff, but there was a guy that I worked with that was always like trying to compete, and it's like, I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I'm trying to take what's been given to me, God given to me, and use it and start a business with it, which the business has been started. But what we're doing in here, if you don't have this equipment and don't have these converters, you can't even get into that league. You can't hear what I hear, and that is the sad part for a lot of musicians out there. But what I've done is made this very affordable for musicians. I've made this very, very affordable. But what is your definition of affordable? A lot of guys think that mixing, or you've talked to people that mix, or you've spent time in Pro Tools and you've done, you've turned up faders and volumes. Let me just put it this way. I would do this stuff all day for $50 a track if all I had to do was sit here, open this session up, and move these faders and move the volume to sound good. Because I can do that quick. I can do that in 15, 20 minutes and just, yep, got it, cool, sounds good, bounce it. That's not what it is. To you newbies out there, I want you to understand this, because just because you're new to mixing and mastering and stuff like that, mixing we're focusing on today. This is mixing. And the reason I'm saying this is because just because you don't understand this does not mean anything that you're not a good musician. Because some guys have that in their head. Well, we should be able to do our own stuff. It's our music. Well, then there's ads that they run that say that stuff. Dude, that is false. I don't know any professional, traveling, world-class musicians that actually sit here and mix the final mix of their song. They may work on their own songs and get it where they want it to be and maybe work in the studio side by side with the engineer, or they might not even show up at the studio. They know that these engineers that they're trusting their music to know what they're doing. So that's a different story. But we're working with EQ inside the box. We're working with compression inside the box. We're working with different time-based effects and reverbs and delays and auxiliaries to fill in certain parts of the song. So we're going to mix it to the fullest until it says, till the song like starts talking back like, yeah, it's done, I'm done, stop. And that's when we stop, okay? There is no half mix. I can't do a half mix. And if you're into that kind of thing, then I'm not the guy to send it to. The next stage after this, because I do both, but I don't do them on the same night. We did this mix that I was just showing you a little bit of. We did this mix and it took, I don't know, it was like between 6 and 8 hours. Gentleman came over and he was actually sitting in with me. And we did like a quick basic master, which means I'm turning up the volumes on the master bus and I'm putting some sort of compression on the master bus as well as some EQ on the master bus. But we needed to get it on the internet real quick. So we did that, but the next day, I gave myself a day to rest on it and come back in and just briefly when I start the master, I'm working with just the 2-track. Just the instrument, everything is there on a 2-track. And then we're making decisions based on entire frequency ranges of instruments and entire frequency ranges of drums. And are the vocals still popping? Or do the horns sound good with the vocals? Is everything sitting well? And we're talking about frequencies within frequencies. And we're utilizing EQ. I might be confusing some of you guys, but we're using the EQ in a different way in the mastering. And we're using compression in a different way in the mastering. So yes, a better mix leads to a better master. I mean, a great mix leads to an awesome, amazing, fantastic, chart-topping master. But here's another thing. A lot of guys out there, and I'm not here to degrade people, but a lot of guys are just opening up mastering shops. It's like who can, market themselves the best. And there's a lot of guys that aren't mastering music. Literally, if I didn't have the massive passive, the backs, and the Manly MU in those converters, I would say I'm not a mastering house. I'm wise enough to understand that. There are mastering engineers that are going to cost a lot more money, okay? And the reason I'm saying this is they do have this, and then they have some more. They have more. They have a lot more in their treatments of their rooms. They have a lot more in their acoustics of their rooms. My room, personally, is as flat as I've ever heard my room. Considering I've went to school for this, and I think my room sounds better than some of the studios at the school. It's comparable to a lot of, let's just put it this way, I built this studio on a budget. Like everybody builds something on a budget. But I was able to achieve it, thank God, to get it to sound the way I wanted it to sound. The speakers we're using are JBL LSR 6328s that are infamous speakers, and 5.1 mastering. They just redid Jimi Hendrix's album. They remastered it with these speakers. Eddie Kramer. But for the money, I just want to end with this. If you've never ever heard your music go through stuff like this, or ever had a professional mastering engineer actually work on your stuff, give it a shot. And you could try me out. And I'm not saying just me. I'm saying this to every mastering engineer across the country that's actually has the equipment and has the facilities to do it. And every mixing engineer out there that you would like to work with. Find a mixing engineer and a real mixing engineer and a real mastering engineer. And your music will start to see numbers happen. You'll start to see your career actually grow. I've seen it more times than not that people start with this vision in their head and they start with the basics and they have this great talent, and they have this great music, and I'm just like, and they'll continuously bounce it themselves, burn it themselves, do it themselves, bounce it themselves, and all of a sudden they'll finally wake up and they'll go, dude, or they'll get up the money and they'll be like, yeah, I want to get this stuff worked on, and I start working. And you don't have to be a professional, you don't have to know anything. You don't have to know how to bounce pros. You don't have to know anything. I'm here to do that and help you. You're pretty much employing me. So a lot of guys, just bring that to the table. Say what you want to say. And tell me where you want to go. And let's just put it this way. The track number of people's music I've worked on, let's say 6 out of 10 will either hit the radio, get success in the digital domain as far as downloads, will promote themselves better, will have a better strategy, and all of a sudden everybody gets to hear their music. The people that don't invest in this stuff or don't see a need for mixing and mastering, you're missing the whole second half of the recording business in the production side. You're missing the whole entire production side of a recording. And if you're trying to take all this stuff on, I've seen it happen, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I know a lot of great people that still do it to this day, and they just don't have the money to do it. And I pray and I hope that everybody can actually get to hear this. If you don't have enough money for a whole album, you know, just focus in on one song at a time and just try to make your dreams happen. And honestly, if you're going to be an independent artist, independent record company, you need to pay for these services, or you just got one killer in-house mixing engineer that's making it happen for you. So with that all being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a way for me to show you a lot of the equipment that I'm using and how I use it. And once again, my website's imixandmaster.com. I actually have a track that I put up with this song that was just the mix, and it was like the before the master, really. It was just the dumb master. So think about it that way. imixandmaster.com once again. I appreciate all you guys on YouTube. If you keep subscribing, maybe I can get a video crew or something in. We can really do some killer, just full-blown videos, and I can go from studio to studio. But I need people to subscribe. I need... what I mean by that is I would like to have the channel keep growing, and it'd force me into buying cameras or hiring in camera crews. So it's just, dude, I gotta hire people in too. It's crazy. It's like, that's just how it works. If you want something great, go get the people that are great at it, and everybody will enjoy it, so you guys can enjoy the videos too. So there it is.
I'ma do this shit without.
I just make it sound good, dude. Don't put me in the video. And don't, I don't care if you put my name on the back of your album. I really don't.